think there's a lot of places on this globe. It's hard to pick where I'd want to go. Maybe we can look up some of the places on the iPad and learn more about them. Oh, hello and welcome friends to another of Cosette's Enchanted Journeys. You just caught my sweet crafty cat Cosette and myself looking at our iPad and studying this globe over here to try and decide on places that we might like to visit one day. Do you have a list of places that you might like to see someday? I know I always have a list, and it changes all the time as I learn more about the world and places that I didn't know existed and things that I've never seen before. My list gets longer and longer and longer, and I hope that someday I get to see many of the places on my list. Today's story takes place in one of the places that I have been to, but I'd really like to go again. This one takes place in Paris, France. Have any of you ever been to France before? It's a really magical place. Would you like to go on an enchanted journey with me now and read a story that takes place in that city? Okay, here's what we do. We rub our hands together and say, I wish to go on an enchanted journey, and away we go. I wish to go on an enchanted journey. Friends, for today's story we have Madeline by Ludwig Bemelmans. I hope that you enjoy this story. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines they broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. They smiled at the good and frowned at the bad. And sometimes they were very sad. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines, in rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeline just said, "Pooh, pooh." And nobody knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavel. In the middle of one night, Miss Clavel turned on her light and said, "Something is not right." Little Madeline sat in bed, cried and cried, her eyes were red. And soon after Dr. Cone came, he rushed out to the phone, and he dialed Dan Ton 10-6. "Nurse," he said, "it's an appendix." Everybody had to cry. Not a single eye was dry. Madeline was in his arm, in a blanket, safe and warm. In a car with a red light, they drove out into the night. Madeline woke up 2 hours later in a room with flowers. Madeline soon ate and drank. On her bed there was a crank, and a crack on the ceiling had the habit of sometimes looking like a rabbit. Outside were birds, trees, and sky, and so 10 days passed quickly by. One nice morning, Miss Clavel said, "Isn't this a fine day to visit Madeline?" Visitors from 2 to 4 read a sign outside her door, tiptoeing with solemn face, with some flowers and a vase. In they walked, and then they said, "Ah," when they saw the toys and candy and the dollhouse from Papa. But the biggest surprise by far, on her stomach was a scar. "Goodbye," they said, "we'll come again." And the little girls left in the rain. They went home and broke their bread, brushed their teeth, and went to bed. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." And afraid of a disaster, Miss Clavel ran faster and faster. And she said, "Please, children, do tell me what is troubling you." And all the little girls cried, "Boo-hoo! We want to have our appendix out too." "Good night, little girls. Thank the Lord you are well. And now go to sleep," said Miss Clavel. And she turned out the light and closed the door, and that's all there is. There isn't any more. And what did you think of the story of Madeline? I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. It is a little silly that her friends wanted all that candy and toys and were willing to get their appendix out for it. I don't know if I'd be quite willing to do that. Maybe. I don't know. I do like ice cream and candy and toys. What did you think of the pictures, the illustrations in the book of the different sites in the country we know as France, and in specifically the city of Paris? Like this picture on the front of the cover, this is the Eiffel Tower. You know, I think it might be fun for us to make an illustration, picture, sculpture, something today that has to do with the city of Paris, France. Would you like to try something like that with me? I think it might be a lot of fun. All right, I'm going to put up some materials that we're going to need, and we're going to try to make our very own Paris-themed something today. I haven't quite decided if we're going to make a sculpture or a picture. I guess I'm going to go and figure that out and bring you along with me. Are you ready to go? All right, let's go. Reading Madeline really inspired me to come up with a Paris activity that we could do together. And I looked online and I saw this idea that I thought was really neat. It's string art of the Eiffel Tower. Now, we're not going to copy exactly this, but we're going to follow this guide to make our own. So what we're going to need is a printout of the Eiffel Tower, which I'll put up a link that you can copy this and print it out, or you can hand draw it. It's not too hard to shape. You can draw a big, tall triangle and make a little cutout window and make your own version of the Eiffel Tower. We're going to need some string in the colors red, white, and blue. Just like America, France uses red, white, and blue. You'll need a marker if you're going to draw your own Eiffel Tower, or if you want to trace an Eiffel Tower. I'm going to use this printout. I'm going to trace it on tracing paper and cut it out, and then I'm going to pin that paper onto the next piece that we're going to use, which is a polystyrene sheet. So I've got these, they're plastic, they're a nice filmy, hard sheet of paper that we can use to poke our pins through, and we're going to use red, white, and blue and make our string art. So step one, either draw or print out an Eiffel Tower to work with. What's called vellum paper is what I'm using. It is a paper that's see-through. It is like tracing paper. It's just a little bit thicker. So instead of thin, like tissue paper feeling, like tracing paper, it's a little bit thicker. I'm using that, and I'm gonna trace out my Eiffel Tower and cut it out. So you can do that now. There, once you've traced out your Eiffel Tower on your vellum paper, you cut it out. Once you've cut out your Eiffel Tower, you should have something that looks like this. And again, this is my tracing paper or vellum paper. And what we're going to do next is we're going to pin that onto our polystyrene sheet. Now, if you don't have anything like this at home, they do sell kits at craft stores where you can try string art with a pre-designed kit and plan to see if you like it first. But you can also buy this online. So the next step, I'm going to lay out my Eiffel Tower on my sheet, and I'm going to start placing my pins. Poke through the top of your picture and into the plastic. So just go very slowly, otherwise your pin can bend, because this is thick and it's a little tough to push it through. You want to leave some room to wrap string around it, so you're only going to push it maybe 2/3 of the way in. So again, I'm just going to take my pin and I'm going to very gently, carefully, and being careful not to poke my finger in the back, push the pin through the plastic. Now don't worry about these extra pins right now in the back. We're gonna either bend them down or cut them when we're all finished pushing them in. The other thing you could do is you could put this in like a shadow box to hang on your wall so that those pins wouldn't stick out in the back. But I'm gonna leave them just like that for now while I get my project built. So we're just placing pins around corners and edges so that we'll have areas to push our string around. All right, when you've completed your rows of blue, you're going to add some rows of white. When you have all your white rows done, you should now have blue and white the next row, and to finish her off, we're going to use red. Your fingers might get a little tired after you've done all this poking. I know mine are. So you can take a break if you need to and come back and finish more of the pins later if you need. The next thing, you're going to use your blue string or blue embroidery thread, whatever you have, and you're going to tie a knot at the top of the project on the top pin toward the base of it. And then we're just going to wrap around the blue. So first, grab a section of your blue embroidery thread and tie it around your first pin. We're just going to take our thread and start wrapping it around. I'm going to wrap it around the top one once. I'm going to come down, wrap it around here, and I'm just going to go around and wrap my thread around the pins at least one time each, and then kind of maybe crisscross around to make interesting patterns. For now, I'm just zigzagging around my pins, and then I'm going to go back up. But this is the part where you get to be creative and have some fun, just wrapping it around your pins. And you can just take your finger and kind of push down a little bit to see how your pattern's looking. You can make this thread as thick or as thin as you want. I've only gone around one time so far, and this is how it's looking so far. I'm gonna go around one more time because I want it to look a little bit thicker. When you think you've got as much as you like, you can trim off the excess, and you're gonna tie a knot, so leave some extra. I left some extra here. I'm going to just tie a knot around the last pin I finished with. I'm going to tie it around, make sure it doesn't come off. And I'm going to just push down my pins a little bit, even them up, and keep my thread down where I like it. If you got some that are sticking up a little too far, you can just kind of push them down. And don't worry about the back. Like I said, we'll fix that at the end. And then the next, we're gonna repeat and do white, and then we're gonna follow along and do red. I'm gonna go up this side. Now that I have the inside, I don't have this edge over here done yet, as you can see, but I've got this outer edge and the inside, so I'm gonna go ahead and start a pattern for those. I'm just gonna crisscross and wrap around. And again, you don't have to make yours look the same as mine. You can do this however you like. If you don't like it looking matchy-matchy, you can wiggle it all around. It helps to turn your work, to hold the string really tight, and to really push down and wrap those strings around the pins as you go. That's what I'm finding to make it a little bit easier. When you're happy with your white, you're ready to move on to the reds. Same process as before. You're just gonna make a knot somewhere on the side of your project to start with. And then just go ahead and wrap it around. When you're wrapping your string, one thing I would encourage you is to not pull the string too tight as you go. You don't want to pull your pins out of place or bend your pins, so just loosely wrap it. You might need to wrap it a little tight at first just to get it to stay where you're working with it, or use your finger to push and hold it down as you go. That helps too. All right, when you're all finished, your project might look a little something like this. Red, white, and blue. There's my Eiffel Tower. Now again, I gotta fix my pins, but the first thing I wanna do is make sure all my extra thread is tied nice and tight in knots, and then you can trim that right off. All right, you have a couple of options. You can ask a parent or guardian to help you cut them. I'm going to use these wire cutters just to cut these excess pieces off. You can try and bend them down with a parent or guardian's help, or you can hide them in like a shadow box frame and hang this on your wall, because this is art that's meant to be displayed. But I'm going to go ahead and just cut mine off. This is going to take a little bit of time if you decide to cut your pins down. The other thing you could do is use smaller push pins, like tacks might work really well for something like this. Or again, a shadow box frame I think is going to be your best bet. If you don't have small pins that you can use and you used longer pins like I did, and they are difficult to cut, or you don't feel comfortable cutting them, I've cut a couple, you can just bend them over like this, and then when we're done bending them down, we're going to just put some duct tape or masking tape on the back to keep them flat. And then you can adjust the pins in the front, but I think that'll work nicely for you. So we're going to go ahead and just bend and tape. If you're very careful, you might even be able to just push the pins down with your fingers on the back. Just secure those with tape. And again, I'm just using some mask. You don't want to play with this because you don't want to hurt your fingers, but just secure it with some tape back there as much as you need. Carefully push the pins over until you can secure the pointy edges down a bit with some tape. And again, the best use of this sort of project where you're using nails or pins or anything is to put it in a shadow box and hang it on the wall. I'm flipping my project over and just pushing down from the other side. That helps flatten that out. Just be gentle. Okay. But there you have it, your very own string art Eiffel Tower. Again, this project's a little advanced as far as the pins go. You want to use very short pin lengths. Maybe push pins would be best for this project. After having made this with you, I would recommend using red, white, and blue push pin tacks into your plastic. I would also recommend getting a shadow box to put this inside of so that any leftover pieces in the back don't stick out and poke you, and you can hang it and mount it on your wall. And if you can't do that, then I recommend you have an adult or guardian help you to either tape down these sharp edges or trim them down with some cutting tools so that you don't have any edges that can poke you or hurt you. And just take your time with that step, be careful with the pins, and hopefully you'll end up with some mountable art just like this for your wall. Did you have a good time? You ready to head back to see Cosette and the magic lamp with me? All right, let's go. And welcome back to the Magic Lamp, friends. Did you enjoy our story about Madeline in Paris, France? And how about our string art craft activity? Did you enjoy doing that? I hope it wasn't too tricky for you. And do remember that you can use that technique with different colored pins and different strings to make other works of art that you can hang up around your house. I hope that you will try it again and again and enjoy the process of using your imagination and creativity to make stories that you like come to life. I do hope that you'll write to me and Cosette and share some of your ideas or some of your finished artwork with us. You can send us an email at cosettesenchantedjourneys@gmail.com, or you can write to me at the address at the end of the show. I hope you are well and take good care of yourselves until we see you again. Bye-bye.